Is a couple things to me. One of them is I had an enormous number of family there. So
your own family?
My own family. So my mom has 3 other siblings. They all were there in that same town. And so my aunts, my uncles, all of my cousins were all in Toledo. So Toledo was a big family town for me. And it's Midwest.
What was the level of Jewish observance in your home?
So my home in particular, my mom was raised Reform. My dad was raised Orthodox. So we, of course, in Toledo, there's 3 synagogues. 1 Orthodox, 1 Reform, 1 conservative, and we were a conservative. Okay. So it was interesting because my mom had to do a lot of learning and shifting to make it comfortable for my dad. So the level of observance, we had a kosher home. My mom had never had a kosher home growing up, didn't really know anything about being kosher. But she learned.
Did you feel like a minority growing up in a town of the size of Toledo?
Absolutely. Huge influence on what I thought and who I was and I went to the public high school, and there were a handful of Jews there. I have deep, searing memories, for instance, in elementary school when they would say, we would be, for months, or weeks, it felt like months, we'd be singing Christmas songs to get ready for the Christmas pageant. And then one day, out of the blue, they'd say, well, all the Jewish kids, all 4 of us out of, the 80 kids in that grade, come up to the front and sing a Jewish song for Hanukkah. And we always sang, I Have a Little Dreidel, because it was the only one that everyone knew. That was the worst song. It was all in English. Very embarrassing.
So do you think that experience of being a distinct minority affected your Jewish identity later on?
Absolutely. I feel that I've always felt I live in 2 worlds, and that everyone looks at me and I kind of blend right in. I look like everybody else. I feel like I'm not like everybody else. And I don't outwardly portray that and don't outwardly scream that at people. And I do dress like everybody else. It isn't that I kind of set myself apart, but I feel so different in many aspects. How I view things, could I participate in things, whether the struggle for, football on Friday nights in my own home.
Because you wanted to go to the game, but you wanted to be at home?
Right, exactly.
How'd you solve it?
So how we solved it was we had Friday night dinner together, and then I would go to the game afterwards. But it wasn't it doesn't really matter, you just go to the game, or it wasn't, no, you can't go to the game, stay home. So this was our kind of compromise we came up with.
And then where did you go to college?
I started at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I went there for 2 years. I then left and lived in Israel for 9 months. And then I came back and I went to University of Wisconsin in Madison. Okay,
so those 3 different locations, there were a large number of Jewish students. How did you respond to being no longer such a small minority, but I guess I would call it a comfortable minority?
Right. So finally you could find people that you feel comfortable with, that there was enough of a population there that you had lots of friends that were Jewish, who you had other interests besides just that you were both Jewish. And it felt great to participate in lots of things and feel comfortable, kind of comfortable in your own skin after being kind of like, I'm trying to hide something.
And talk about your 9 months in Israel. How did that, first of all, why did you choose to go? I assume it's a junior year abroad program?
So what it was is that I was involved in high school, I was involved in Young Judea. And so afterwards, some of the core people, that was really very influential on my life in Young Judea. High school, I just kept more and more withdrawn. I felt really alienated from the ongoings of high school. And the thing that kept me going was really Young Judea and my friends who lived in other cities and other parts of the country. At the end of that, many of my friends were going on year course. And my dad in particular was convinced that if I didn't go to school right away, that I would never come back. He might be right. But so the deal was I go to school for 2 years and then I got to decide. So I went and I just went to Kibbutz Ulpan by myself.
And was this your first trip to Israel?
I had been for a summer with Young Judea for a summer trip as a junior in high school.
And can you look back and see that time in Israel affected how you view a Jewish identity? how you feel about being Jewish?
I think for the first time I felt like you could be Jewish and it wasn't all about your observance, and how to really live a Jewish life that felt part of the culture of the life and not just about the laws and the religious observance. And it was great. It was a really great experience. It was great to meet people from all over and see the commonalities, and really kind of sunk in then of like, so how do you want to live your life and how to kind of make that happen?
Tell me about your decision to become a doctor.
So I went through many phases of what I would do with my life and lots of different options all over the board. From a teacher, a journalist, I was going to be a ranger in the park system, all over the place. But I think I evolved into this, that I felt really strongly that this was the combination of things that would be good for me. I liked science. I liked to teach. I wanted to do something with people. I did not want to just be about papers and paperwork and just ideas. I wanted to touch people every day, literally touch people every day. And I had enough different experiences that this kind of brought it together. I had this fear of going to medical school. At the time, women were a huge minority in entering in medical school. And I thought that could I do it? Did I have what it takes to kind of get through all that? Mm-hmm. I took some pre-med classes, and it was not a very loving, nurturing environment, and learning was very competitive, and is that what I really wanted? So I struggled with it, but then moved in this direction.
Do you feel you were influenced by the women's movement at that time?
Absolutely, and I felt I had this responsibility to push myself, mm-hmm. that if I thought I could do it, that I should take that risk and I should push myself to do it. That it was I had this really responsibility that I could not say, oh, this is more comfortable. I'll do what I like and what feels good to me. I had to do it to kind of push the boundaries a little bit.
Was your family encouraging?
Absolutely. Very encouraging, very supportive.
And was your medical school experience what you expected? Or I guess what I'm asking is, how is being a woman in medical school? Because this was just the brink of a great wave of female professions.
Exactly. It really was just the brink. I always say that I thought that once I got to medical school, it would be much better. And when I got there, I realized the same people who went to medical school were all the people that I didn't really like in the pre-med classes. So it was very competitive, not a lot of camaraderie, and I felt there were very, very few role models, female role models. Mm-hmm. So it was really a man's world, and we were accepted in a very nice, but I really felt like second-class citizens there, but accepted, mm-hmm. not dismissed completely. But you clearly had to push yourself and prove yourself over and over.
Did you rely on the other women to support each other?
Some of them, and there was a small group of women who were, I felt, similar to me, who were really in it for what I thought were the right reasons. Mm-hmm. And then there were some women that shocked me that were, they wanted just to make a lot of money. And it was like, it just was the antithesis of what I thought women would be in that profession. So
going through this experience without role models or mentors, do you like to see yourself as a role model for the next generation?
I do. And I see that in many different levels. I see it as a woman. I see it as a mom. And how do you balance career and family? And I see it also as my choice of profession in primary care. So part of what happens in my work is that there's residents and students that come through there, and I think that's a huge part of what I need to do, is not just teach them the medicine, but teach them to kind of model what needs to happen, and how I've kind of, my experience.
When you got out of medical school, your career path, you made a conscious decision to first of all, to be a primary care physician and then to serve the poor. Mm-hmm. So talk about that decision and how that came about, your experience with Bread for the City, the clinic where you work.
So I knew I wanted to work in a community setting. That's really what I wanted to do. I felt that I had this knowledge and these skills, and I wanted to make it to the best use possible. And it would be the places where no one wanted to go and no one wanted to practice. So I didn't want to go to a place where you could choose among one of dozens of cardiologists, but a place where nobody was there. So when we moved to DC and I was looking for jobs, I ended up doing a fellowship in primary care at GW. And through that I met this amazing woman, Eve Bargman, who was running the primary care tract residency program at GW, and she took her residents over to this clinic at that time called Zacchaeus Free Clinic, and so I tagged along with her, and that is where I felt the most comfortable in practicing medicine of all the years that I had been lots of different places, in hospital, outpatient settings, inpatient settings, everything.
What was it about it that made you feel so at home? Patients came in, there was an immense amount of respect. There was this thirst for knowledge when they came in. They had lots of questions. They were so appreciative of what we said, so appreciative of any time you gave them. They really listened. They were like sponges because they had never had the opportunity to sit with a professional by themselves and ask all those questions. They're mostly relying on their aunts, their mothers, their friends to try and figure out their health problems. Or they were in an emergency room setting where they would often go and not get really proper care. Mm-hmm. So I think it really was I felt really appreciated, and it was really this great mutual relationship that we had. And you've been there how many years now?
So I started working there in 1991. When I was pregnant with Yona.
Your youngest.
My youngest.
Yeah. Do you think this decision to work with the poor, do you consider this at all a Jewish decision?
So it's hard to answer that question, and I think the reason why, I think about it a lot, I think the reason it's hard to say, is this really because I'm Jewish I'm doing this, is because being Jewish and who I am are so intertwined that on one hand, no, I'm doing this because it's who I am. On the other hand, I'm doing this, of course, because I'm Jewish, because I am who I am because I'm Jewish, and I think that you can't separate out the two.
Yet so many other Jewish professionals, Jewish doctors, choose a different type of practice.
That is true. Mm-hmm. That is true. So I think it's really the values and my Jewish upbringing and my values that were just so much the core of who I am, mm-hmm. that this is where I had to be, and this is the place I would feel I was doing the most good, that I was the most comfortable in serving here.
You ever wonder what your life would have been like had you chosen a different type of practice, more lucrative?
Never.
Never? You're not seduced by the glitter?
Not at all. No, I never think about that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay. All right. You have 3 children.
I do.
Talk about the work-home management conflict that all women of our generation had to deal with.
Yeah, so it's enormous. So I had 3 kids. I had 1 in medical school, 1 in residency, and 1 right after I got out. And then, so it takes a very supportive husband. It takes someone who's got a little bit of flexibility. Someone's sick, someone has to stay home. I can't sometimes. So that's part of, so you have to have that great supportive home environment. But it's really, how do you draw lines, and how do you know what's my life, what's important for me professionally, what's the family life, when is it okay to say I'm a mom and I need to take time off for this.